Hi, everyone. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Hold On to Your Heart Project podcast. I'm your host, Jacquie, and today I'll be talking with Mike, who has faced many challenges in his life, including a workplace accident, which was very severe, loss of a child, and overcoming substance abuse issues. Here's our conversation. Hope you enjoy. Mike, welcome to the Hold On to Your Heart Project podcast. How are you doing?
Good.
Good. Glad that you're here with us tonight. I've done a brief introduction to you, but maybe you'd just like to start by telling us a little bit about yourself, who you are, what you do.
Yeah, no problem. I grew up in the Valley, like in Fernie. Moved here for work later on. Um, I was pretty active, played a lot of hockey when I was younger. Um, Moved here, started a family at a young age, was married very young. Um, had three kids. I also started as a lineman when I was in my younger 20s. That's what I do now, and that's we'll talk about later. But I got hurt, a serious accident at work where I lost my arm and leg. Yeah, and I still work for the exact same company. Um, Try to be as active as possible. Um, yeah, I enjoy this area. Happy what I do now, and trying to make the best of my unfortunes throughout my life. So.
You're just in from a trip out sledding today.
Yep, I had to
Yeah.
go sledding today. It's busy winters. Both my boys play hockey, so I don't get to ride as much as I want. So now that there's a little bit of a break in between hockey and lacrosse, I thought I'd take advantage of sledding today. So
I know you've been just trying to coordinate just times to maybe have a chat or get you here.
yeah,
Could definitely sense that you got a lot on your plate and a lot going on. And
yeah. I was just in Vancouver. I broke my prosthetic leg on last Saturday, so that's why I had to go there and get it fixed, and got back last night.
there isn't that resource here in this community for that.
There is. It just when I was hurt, they set me up in Vancouver as like some of the best guys in Western Canada that I work with for my arm, and then I have another guy for my leg. So they're just so good. WorkSafe's been amazing to me. So they fly me there, get everything I need, and then fly back.
So you have a prosthetic on your leg, but you
Yep.
don't on your arm. Do you have any?
No, I used to back in the day, but it's just it gets in the way, like because my arm's so high
Hmm.
that it's almost like a shoulder, like as if I'm missing my shoulder.
Hmm.
So I used to use it back in the day, but the only time I use it now is for sledding or mountain biking.
More of an
Yeah,
inconvenience than anything.
yeah. So yeah,
So a Kootenai boy,
yeah.
born and bred.
Born and bred.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and I still have a lot of the same friends. So lost a lot that moved away, but
When we'll kind of just jump right into it here. When you think, first off, thanks for early days of this project and wanting to be a part of it. And I know speaking with you, you seemed eager that you think it's a good idea and that you think that there's a need for this. And, I feel like when kind of thinking of people in our community, my community, that were inspirational to me in their story and their way of being, you definitely were on the radar, and we never knew each other
yeah,
well, and we still don't. So yeah, I mean, just as an outsider looking in, I mean, you definitely physically was obviously the first thing for me to know that you had a story, but then even just like further discovering how deep that goes. So yeah, a lot of gratitude for you participating and contributing to the podcast. I think that your story is one that's really special and can help a lot of people and inspires me. So yeah, there's that. And you know, this project idea of hold on to your heart, the phrase, when I say that, what do you think of?
oh, it's every time like I think about it, it changes almost for me. But for me, like right off the top of my head, I think like I used to suppress a lot of things. And the more like I visited like with a psychologist and stuff, I learned that as a younger kid, I did that as well from the start. So I letting go and like dealing with those emotions when they happen um, is is like a proper way of coping with things that I never did before. So letting go for me or holding on to my heart, I used to protect my heart by not saying anything or just keeping things hidden, and I just would push it farther and farther down. And I didn't realize till, as I tell my story, I'll kind of circle back to it, but like it backfired on me. Like my darkest days came after my accident, when I thought I was strong, when I thought I was dealing with things properly, but just the way I was suppressing all those emotions and feelings, it just made me numb later on down the road.
Is there a certain particular time when you really had to hold on to your heart that you could allude to?
Um, I think for me, you gotta be kidding. I think for me when it was understanding that I deserve to be happy, you know, and by suppressing all those feelings, I wasn't happy, when I was pretending to be something I wasn't. And I think the moment I realized that I could let go of everything, then I could find myself again.
So, what was happening in your life when you realized that you deserved to be happy?
Um, I think just so I'll kind of start with my story a little bit. So when I was younger, I had a great childhood, great friends. I was active. I was, confident, all those like good attributes. But I could never say no to people. So like when I was dating girls, I always like catered to whatever they wanted, or they would want to do things, and I would be like, yes. And then so when I met my wife, we got married. I was 21. We got married. She was 19,
Yeah.
and she was part of the Mormon religion, which I have nothing bad to say about the religion, but it just wasn't for me.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't want to get married. I didn't want to do those things at that time, but I couldn't say no because I thought, well, I love this person, so I'll do whatever it takes to be with them. And
Mm-hmm.
if it meant doing something I didn't want to do, then so be it. Doesn't matter, and uh, and it was fine. Like I still found, I was able to find happiness, but I just found losing myself more and more as the years went on.
Did you see this kind of yes behavior and do whatever it takes? Like, was that what was shown to
Not at the
you?
moment. No,
No.
I didn't. I just thought I was doing the right thing,
Yeah.
and I was young. So it wasn't until later in my life that I realized that by doing that, after like, obviously my wife and I, you know, ended up having a separation later on, but in those moments when it was in my darkest days, I didn't know who I was. And I didn't know what I wanted because I spent all those years living to just do whatever everybody else
Please.
wanted and please everybody and be a pleaser that I forgot I didn't even know what I wanted or who I was.
Mm-hmm.
And when people are like, "Oh, what do you want to do?" I'm like, "I don't know. I honestly don't know." So it's like I had to rediscover myself at like the age of 40, and it was tough. It was really hard.
Bad.
But at the same time, it was just more of not finding the proper balance in my life because I'm still by nature I am a pleaser, and I do like to give and I like to help. My parents are I learned that from them. They're both givers,
Okay. Yeah.
and to this day, like my dad's the greatest example of that. Like he'll do anything for anybody, anytime, doesn't even question it for me, like myself or anybody. He'll do it no matter what. So I still like that person, but you can't be full that person. You still have to find a balance of like where where's the balance, but I also take care of myself. And I'm also doing the things that I need to do for myself. And I didn't learn that till way later on. So it was a hard lesson to learn at a later date in life for sure.
So you're young, you're married, you're kind of a people pleaser, you're doing things because
Yeah.
it's what you think you should be doing. You've kind of maybe lost parts of yourself somewhere along the way. Now you know, you're not always standing in your own truth, but you're kind of,
Yeah. And it was so the thing is I never got a chance to even find myself because we got married at a young age and I was happy what I was doing.
hmm
Um, but I didn't realize the problem with me with life, how life happened for myself and my wife and my daughter. She was 3 at the time, but like, you know, we decided to have kids right away, and I didn't want to have kids right away. But then when I had her, it was the best thing that ever happened to me. And, and I was a changed person. Like when I used to snowmobile, I would do stupid things. I was like no fear, And then I had her, and it was like, oh shit, I started thinking, oh, maybe I can't do this. Maybe I can't do this. I started thinking about putting her first,
Mm-hmm.
which was fine. And then we decided to have another child, and it was a struggle to have kids. Like my wife struggled to have kids, so he came right away though. She was on infertility, and he came right away, and and we were struggling, my wife and I at the time too. So, and then she got pregnant, and he was born, and it was like we connected again. It was an awesome experience. He came to the world, and
You and your wife connected again.
yeah, and it was awesome. And he looked just like me when he was born, so I was a really proud dad,
Hmm.
And then 2 months later he passed away, and it was that was tough. It's been 16 years, um, and I still have troubles some years, and other years it's fine.
How did
Um,
he pass away?
he It was just one night. I was coming home from work, and I was talking to my wife on the phone, and she was saying we're gonna go to the show tonight, and we're gonna go with some other friends and stuff. And I was like, okay, sounds good. And he was just screaming in the background, like, what's wrong with Jackson? And she's like, I don't know. He just started screaming for no reason, and then he just stopped. So we went to the show that night, and we come to the show, and he was cold. He was getting really clammy, and his lips were going blue. And we didn't know what was going on, so we took him to Emerge, and they didn't know what was going on. And it was all surreal. Like it didn't. It's like it wasn't. It was happening in real time, but you couldn't comprehend what was happening. And then they're like, we got to fly him to Calgary. And as soon as they said that, that was it. He was done. They couldn't do anything. And
Did they get him to
they,
Calgary?
no, we didn't leave Cranbrook. They figured he had a twisted bowel. And so when his bowel twisted, that's when he would have been screaming. And then it unraveled, but it killed a part of his bowel or his intestine. But it put him into septic shock. And when a baby goes into septic shock, their vitals are strong. They don't like crash until the very end. So that's no one really knew what was going on. And being that we were religious people at the time, um, everybody's like, oh, just everything's gonna be fine. Just pray and give you the hope speech, and that works for some people, but that's all it made us do was pretend that we were good, that we were okay with everything.
Is that what you tried to do back then? Is pretend
Yeah,
that everything was good?
everyone's like, oh, you're doing so good, you're so strong. And every time we tried to, like, you know, and it's not easy for people. It's a hard situation, to approach someone that's just lost a child. That you want to tell them you're dying inside, but they want to tell you that everything's going to be okay, right? So then you don't tell them that you're dying inside.
Mm-hmm.
So then you just pretend that you're good. And then everyone's like, you guys are amazing, you're doing so good. But, I'd go away for work, and I'd use work as an excuse to like distract myself. Meanwhile, my wife would be at home crying in a closet while my daughter's out in the kitchen,
Mm-hmm.
and then we'd see people in public and we're fine. We're just like this strong couple. And then we decided to adopt. And we adopted our son Jonas from Miami. And that was just before that, though, we did go to counseling. We went one time, and he said to us, he's like, you don't do this to replace a child. He's like, you got to heal first. And we were just,
How soon after was it?
um, 2 years, but we started the process right away. So we knew that we were going to do it right away, but we didn't. It didn't happen until another 2 years later, and it was one of those things where we convinced ourselves that no, no, we're not doing it to replace them. We're doing it because it's what we want. But it was to replace them, and it was a good experience. We went to Florida, and I didn't want to adopt, but I did, and that's the one thing though that I can say that I'm glad I did, because the moment I picked him up, I didn't think I could love a child that wasn't mine. And
Mm-hmm.
the moment I picked that kid up, I fell in love with him,
Mm.
and we've been pretty close ever since. So, um, and then life was good. Like I used to say this all the time. I was like, he was about 10 months old, I think, and my daughter was in kindergarten. I was starting to work at home a ton. Life was good. My relationship was good, And I remember saying to my wife, I was like, things are too good right now. Something bad's gonna happen. And I think it was like a month later I got my accident. And that was a tough one because I remember waking up in the hospital and I was like, was that a car accident? Because I like, knew if I was electrocuted, it was not going to be good. And yeah, I woke up and I looked down and my arm was already missing. Half my arm was gone, and I had a tube in my mouth, ventilation tube in my mouth. And, I remember dozing off, and I don't remember this, but it was painful for everybody because I'd wake up and I'd be like, "What happened?" I did that for like every time I woke up for the next 2 days.
Mm.
Um, and it was tough to see like my daughter come into the room. You know, uh, she was a daddy's little girl, and I couldn't be strong for her at the moment, and it broke me to see her like just the fear in her eyes. Um, but then again, I just I thought, no, they'd come into the room and they'd be like, well, your leg should be fine. There should be a 5% chance you're gonna lose your leg, and then it was like they go into surgery and they come back out and they're like, going for another surgery and take a bit more, and then they're like, we can't save your leg. So when they amputated my leg, um, I felt like felt like I was dying. Like I was fevered. And then when they cut my leg off, I was like instantly better. Like just felt better, felt stronger. Because the whole time, from a electrical burn, what electrical burn does, it'll literally burn from the inside out, and it superheats your bone to like up to, could be 1,000 degrees, could be, who knows. They don't really have a clue. But they couldn't see how bad it was on the outside.
Yeah.
But like all the ligaments, tendons was just nothing because I couldn't move my foot, I couldn't bend my leg. So when they took that away, all that like septic toxins in my body were gone. So then I felt better, and so then I was excited to like get strong and do things. And then instantly right away I'm like, no, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do that. Because every time a doctor comes in like, oh, you're probably not gonna be able to walk very well. You probably won't be able to do this. You won't be able to do that. And that's like the worst thing you can tell me. Because I'm stubborn. So I'm like, no, I'm gonna do as much as I can. But I got home.
Before you go,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
when we think in the hospital, like, and people coming in and your daughter being there and, like in and out of consciousness and like, you know, wanting to be strong, but like underneath that, what do you think what was really happening? Like, or what were you saying?
In the moment, I didn't think of it. I honestly didn't. In the moment, I was just thinking about survival.
Yeah.
And I mean, it did suck. There was obviously moments where I was like, I'm never gonna be the same again. But it wasn't bad. But when it got bad is when I went home from the hospital.
Okay.
Because the whole time I was in the hospital, I was in that zone of like, recovering,
Mm-hmm.
doing physio. And then the moment I got home, the moment I seen pictures of myself, and the moment everybody's life went back to normal, that's when it got tough.
How long were you in the hospital for?
2 months.
2 months in the
Yeah.
hospital.
2 months, and then I went to Vancouver for my rehab. So I did all my rehab there. But I wasn't there for long. I did have to go back after a year to get, this leg was giving me a lot. Actually, it's a funny story. I was, um, Jonas at the time would have been, he was just starting to walk.
Your adopted son.
Yeah. No, no. Yeah, he was just starting to walk. So I took him outside. I was like, need to get out of the house. And he was a little shit. Like he never, oh, if you told him, come here, he was gone. So we go on the sidewalk and he darts off to the street. And I was like, okay, I guess I'm going to try to run after him. And I'm just learning how to walk on a prosthetic. So I dart after him and it did something to my leg. And later on found out, because then it started causing me pain forever. Like it took like a year of like back and forth. And then finally what they found out was the bone calcified so bad on the end of my femur, and it was floating in there, and it was like pinching nerves. So they had to go back in and shave all that off and reshape my bone. And then after that was good. And then it was like I was walking, no pain. And
That
then,
was like a year after you were
yeah, I had
out.
to go back for surgery a year later.
Yeah.
Yeah. But then after that, I went to work right away. So, but I got that whole motivation of doing all these things. It faded fast. Um,
Like who you thought you were going to be after your accident
yeah.
to who you became.
Yeah, like I was very insecure. I hated what I looked like in the mirror.
Was that immediately?
Yeah, yeah, I hated it. Um, because I don't know, I was very active before. Um, Still played hockey, rec league, and still snowmobiled, boated. We did everything. So that was tough. And just like seeing, like I did everything, for my wife, and I was the guy that packed everything, did all these things with the kids on the weekends, and I couldn't do it anymore. And I didn't know if I ever could, and I hated it. And then I felt guilty that the strain I put on my family. Um, After losing our child, that was tough on, my wife and I. It was tough on our parents. And then it felt like I was doing it all over again to my parents. And I could just see my parents just slowly just crashing,
What
not
were
being able
you
to,
doing to your parents? Sorry.
just this, I could see the pain just because their son was going through so much shit.
Hmm.
And it broke my heart. So then I wouldn't talk to them about things. And they just wanted to help, and then would help more.
So when they say, or when you say they noticed you going through, like what were they noticing?
Um, I think for like that was hard on my relationship with my parents, just because I think they were the type of people that didn't want to see their kid go through hurt or pain,
Hmm.
and they knew that I was hurting from not being able to do what I wanted.
Hmm.
But then they tried to help me too much, and then I would be like, I can do that myself. I don't need your help. They're like, but we just want to help you. And then it was a wedge that kind of drove my parents and I apart almost, because then I didn't want to tell them anything, because I didn't want them to see me hurting. So I'd lie to them, like, oh, I'm good. No, nothing's bothering me. But meanwhile, deep down, like I said, my insecurity issues were so bad. Um,
How did that crop up in your life? Like what did it look like?
well, I started getting out of shape because I'm like, I can't work out, can't do anything. Um, actually, as much as my wife and I have our differences right now, that's the one thing that she helped me with was, I remember going to the pool, and she's like, let's go swimming. And I'm like, I don't want to go swimming. She's like, why? I'm like, because everyone's going to stare at me. Because tons of people would stare at me. But in my own mind, I thought it was because they're staring at me because of how I looked. But actually, people are staring at me with either compassion, or they're staring at me like, holy shit, look at this guy, he's still alive. Because I should have died. I shouldn't have survived that accident. Um,
Is there like a likelihood of like survival rates on an accident like that you know of?
yeah, I basically died 3 times on the way to the hospital. They had to revive me a few times. And they told my family I wouldn't make the night because my kidneys would fail from all the toxins in my body from the burnt tissue. So they didn't think I was going to survive. They pretty much told everyone that say your goodbyes because he's not going to make the night.
Wow.
So then, obviously I got better and better, but back to the pool, um, I'm like, I'm not going because she's like, just fucking get in the pool. And so I'm like, okay, fine, I'll get in the pool. And I started swimming. And then I was like, oh, I can do this. And I started swimming laps and I started getting in shape. And then I decided to go back to the gym. And then I was finding that like a little bit of motivation again to do things. Um, but then again, and this is how I don't think like this anymore, but I used to think like, oh, every corner I turn, something bad's gonna happen, and then things started going sideways in our relationship with my wife, and that was the one thing that I thought I'd never have an issue with. So when that happened, um, you know, it's no secret, so I can talk about it, but she had an affair, and I knew about it, found out right away, and it went on for a long time before I decided to leave, but that like tripled down on my insecurities because I thought the reason why she was leaving was because of how I looked and who I was.
Hmm.
And, it's no fault of hers. I mean, it was a huge monkey wrench in our relationship. I mean, it changed a lot of things.
Well, and you just probably not feeling good or feeling insecure isn't.
No, and I was going through a lot of pain at the time too, so I was really edgy.
Mm-hmm.
Like I have really bad phantom pain in my arm, and I didn't know this till after seeing like going to rehab and stuff and talk to him like my rehab doctor, and I'm like I'm fucking edgy. Like I want to snap every 2 seconds, and I'm like my patience are so thin, and she's like, well, Mike, you're dealing with pain 24/7. Because your body's fighting that all day long. Your brain's constantly trying to forget about that. And she goes, so it's natural that you're going to feel edgy.
You're the kind of person that's always just wanting to be okay, that you're just not even feeling it when it's there.
Yeah, I don't know. And I I think sometimes I should have took more care of that situation. But once I learned that though,
Mm-hmm.
once I learned why I was edgy,
Mm-hmm.
then I could deal with it. Then I was aware of it. So at least that way I could process in those moments that, oh shit, I'm getting a little edgy. Maybe I should go take some medication. Because I wouldn't take medication during the day because it'd make me drowsy. So I just take it at night. So when I'm like, okay, well, maybe I need to go deal with that pain right now because I'm going to rip someone's head off. So then I would deal with it. And then now over the years, now that I'm aware of it, I found ways to manage it. So like right now, you and I are talking and it's
Mm-hmm.
getting worse.
Mm.
But up until then, it was fine. Like I didn't even notice it was there.
So you're still currently dealing with that
Yeah.
pain. Wow.
And I don't notice until usually when I lay to go to sleep. So that's why I always take my medication before bed.
What did they give you for something like that?
It's called gabapentin or Lyrica. It's just a nerve medication. Just takes the edge off,
Mm-hmm.
kind of calms it down. So I'm able to fall asleep.
So you were feeling obviously a lot after your accident, and things were happening for you that you couldn't fully understand or comprehend or feel,
Yeah.
and then kind of put a wedge between you and your wife. And
Yeah, and then you know then we decided to so split up and we ended it. But the problem was leading up to that, all those moments, all those times, like whether it was my son, my accident, you know, us in our relationship, I was never dealing with one of them, you know, and then it got to the point where it was like, I just gave up, you know, I just quit. I didn't want to fight anymore. I was so used to fighting and pushing through, and then I accomplished a lot in those 3 years that when I got to the pool, I started wakeboarding. I was like snowmobiling, I was snowboarding, I was skiing. I was starting to accomplish a lot, and I was feeling pretty good,
mm-hmm.
you know, but I still didn't deal with those issues. It was just ways to mask that stuff. But then when that happened with our relationship, I got to the point where I was done fighting. I was done trying. You know, and the worst thing that happened is I started drinking a lot.
What
Um,
were you telling yourself back then? You know, your relationship is now not where you thought it would be. Things are seemingly falling apart. What is it? What's
I don't think I was telling myself anything. I was in survival mode.
yeah.
I think that affair was so hurtful and so much pain that I felt like I was gonna put it this way, and I don't think I've ever told anyone this. It was so bad that I would picture going in front of her and blow my brains out because I thought that was the only way to like show what it felt like. And the only reason why I wouldn't is because of my kids. They were the only thing that was keeping me sane. The only thing that was keeping me to come back to somewhat being who I was. Because I would always put them first. Um, but then, you know, and then I started thinking I need to do things for myself. So then, yeah, I started drinking, and then drinking led to drugs. And then when I started doing drugs, that's when I numbed everything. Like it was the greatest feeling because I was like, oh, I don't feel anymore. I just
Before that, what was your experience with drugs and alcohol?
never touched it.
No.
Like when I was 19 and 20, I would
Have a
smoke
drink.
pot here and there.
Yeah.
And I'd drink. Didn't drink much for 10 years when I was Mormon,
Mm-hmm.
but I still would drink. But nothing. I had a lot of control. Like I was very disciplined before.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, I would judge an addict.
Right, yeah.
I would seriously be like, oh, just don't do it. Simple. Why do you just choose not to do it?
Hmm.
Um, but I think I was just tired of hurting, and I just liked the numb feeling. I
You
just
found
gave
it.
up. And I remember talking to my psychologist after, and she said that when this was when I was struggling with addiction, she said that if it wasn't for the drugs, you probably would have had a mental breakdown. She says, but now you have to deal with an addiction. So, in hindsight, if I just would have coped with my problems as they came, I would have been able to get through the next tough time. It just felt like I said, every corner I turned, it felt like something was happening. It just was like stacking up, and I couldn't breathe. And
You get
so,
that quick relief from alcohol or drugs, and it makes you actually be able to just maybe take it down a couple notches, but then it just compiles everything
yeah,
so much quicker.
yeah. And then I think the problem was I was fine when I started doing it. Like I was still able to like be in control, but
Hmm.
then I got into a bad environment. And then I think, then my wife and I got back together, and I couldn't cope with the past. And I started drinking. I'd get blackout drunk. And I'd wake up the next day and she'd be like, "You were a fucking asshole last night. And you said this and you said that." And I was like, "No, I never. I wouldn't do that." And she's like, "Yeah, you did." And then it happened all the time. And then it got worse. It got worse. And then the drugs got heavily. And we were all in the same environment. So it was always there. And I couldn't escape it. And then I got to the point where I would start justifying it. That was like that was the craziest thing to me, was justifying in my brain why I could do it. And then you think that you can control it, but you can't. Like, and I remember because I ended up going to rehab back in 2020, I think it was. And
Was that your first time in rehab?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And I remember, they're like, the moment you think that you're in control or you have power over the drug, you've already lost. And I did it all, and it was true. Like, if I don't touch it, yeah, I have all the power and control. But the funny thing about drugs is that, and that's why I like the
What is
science.
your drug of choice? Or was it?
Cocaine. Yeah, yeah, and I just like the high, but the problem is that I was always chasing it, and then I hated it. I don't even like doing it, but then I kept falling into it. I developed these triggers, right? So when you put yourself in a toxic environment, or around people that trigger that habit, so every time my wife and I would get into a fight, or every time she was hanging around people that my past would come out, and like, insecurity issues, and like, thinking that something was going to happen again, it was an instant trigger.
Hmm.
And boom, I was because all the stuff would rush back,
Hmm.
and all that pain would come back, and I didn't want to deal with it again. I'm like, nope. So then I would go.
Kind of like a feeling that floods your body of like a rush of maybe cortisol or stress
Yeah.
hormones or whatever it could be, right? I'm no expert, but
No, but I mean, it's anytime you add a chemically induced dopamine into your body, you so like, I don't know, you probably um, heard about this or learned about this before too, but like, so your brain has these pathways of how it gets dopamine naturally from your body, whether it's exercise, whether it's connection, whether it's um,
fast
food,
food, a
diet,
nice hug,
right?
yeah.
So your body has these natural ways of getting dopamine, but as soon as you add in like a chemical um, drug,
Hmm.
you're basically starting to cut those pathways off, and then you're creating a new pathway for this direct line of dopamine. And then so if you use too much, that's the only way your body wants to get it.
Hmm.
And then so you go, so then your brain will start to trick you to want that drug.
It's like the path of least resistance all of a sudden, right?
Yeah,
And it's the quickest answer for
yeah.
all of the problems.
But the problem is that it's too much of a high and rush of dopamine, so your body crashes. So then your lows are super low, your highs are super high, and then your lows are super low.
What would your super lows look like?
Oh, destructive, just emotional wreck, destructive. like in the brain fog that you would get, and then I would just be in that. I would look to be destructive. Like I'd look to fight. I'd look to just hurt, and I hated that. I hate that side.
That's that kind of, for better or for worse, but that hurt people, right?
Yeah, and it did at the end of the. We obviously we separated again, and near the last year, I was a fucking prick. Like I was super. The things I would do, like you know, I would start texting girls. I would do this. I was out of control, and I was looking to do it for a purpose. But
Intention to hurt.
yeah, yeah, I didn't like what she was doing to me, so I would start doing the same thing, and worse. Um, and then just removing that. I don't want to say she's toxic because she's not, because she got her life back together, and she's a good person. She's a great mother. I have nothing bad to say about her, but I couldn't be around it. You know, I couldn't save myself until I removed myself from that environment to get rid of those triggers. And for the longest time, I wanted her to help me get better. I just heard this really good quote the other day. It was like, uh, you can't you can't expect someone that's hurt you. You can't expect them to help heal you. You
Yeah,
have to heal yourself
it is a good one.
because
Also said kind of like you can't heal in the places that hurt you,
yeah, because
right?
either you can't that source of hurt came from there,
Mm-hmm.
or how can you trust the person that hurt you that bad to help you?
And I'm sure there's situations where things are dramatically different and
Yeah,
both people are willing to do, but
for sure.
sometimes you
Yeah,
gotta cut the.
yeah. I mean, obviously, if it was meant to be, it would have worked out, but it didn't, and um, I'm on a really good path right now. I want to find that balance in my life where I'm a giver, but yet I take care of myself and I take care of my kids.
Mm-hmm.
And right now, that was like, people talk about rock bottom. I think rock bottom for me, rock bottom is the moment you decide to change. It's not your lowest. It's not like the worst or the worst thing that's ever happened.
Mm-hmm.
It's the moment you decide to change.
Mm-hmm.
That's rock bottom. And when I decided to change was that I realized that my kids are getting older, and your kids are only young. There's a certain to the moment they move out, that's the shortest time of their life, but it's also the most like precious time that you have with them. And I was losing out on that. I was still doing everything with my kids, but I wasn't present.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you're not emotionally present with them,
No.
and I was missing out on the most important time of their life. And then I'm like, I can't do it anymore, and I want to be happy. I'm tired of this roller coaster life. I'm sick and tired of the fucking lows and the highs, and I just want to be happy and do the things that I want to make it. That's why. So one of the things with this project that you started doing,
Mm-hmm.
I want to make a difference. I want to get back to giving talks to people. I want to start making a difference where people change, or you help somebody that's going through a tough time. And some people have to go through life lessons on their own, but there's times where they can learn from people's experiences as well. And I want to do that again. I want to be that person, and this helps me have accountability as well.
Yeah, how has it looked since being out of treatment for you in 2020? Has it been a.
Well, when I got out of treatment, I was doing amazing.
Yeah.
Um, but I fooled myself to think I could be around it because the circle that we were involved in all did it. It was at my house.
Mm-hmm.
There's parties happening at my house all the time, and I was doing amazing. And then, just a matter of time, and I went back into it. And I remember one of the counselors at rehab said, every time you relapse, you're going to relapse harder, and you won't know when you'll stop. And it happened. Like I
It
relapsed.
really does pick up from where you left off,
Yeah.
right? Like, and that whole thing of it's in there doing push ups, getting ready for you for when you have a moment of weakness, and it's will come back stronger than ever.
Yeah.
That was your
and
case too,
and that
hey?
happened to me, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would, and then it would last, and then my lows were even lower, but the one thing that rehab did teach me was how to like stop that cycle. to where those moments are less and less and less. Because that's the thing too, like with the podcast and talking to people and letting people know about, like, because before I was embarrassed. I would never tell anyone. I wouldn't sit here and tell someone I used to do cocaine. I was ashamed of myself. But like, the more you open up about it, the more I learned from people that opened up to me, and the more I was willing to deal with it.
Well, shame likes the secrecy, right? And
Yeah.
it dies in the communication and the connection and the sharing of it.
Yeah.
So shame does, I think, die when it's
Yeah.
shared with someone. So
Well, you isolate yourself when you're an addict. It's like the worst thing you can do is isolate yourself. It just makes your darkest days get darker.
did you find yourself isolating a lot?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, big time. And then the more I'm open about it, the more people know about. They support you. They're there for you, and then your cycles become less and less, and then you get back on track. One of the things that I learned, dealing with was suppressing all those feelings and emotion. When I went to rehab, I got onto meditation, and meditating taught me how to deal with those feelings and thoughts. Because like when I got back with my wife, like the thoughts that lived in my brain throughout the night, throughout the day, was just constantly recurring past events over and over, and it was like destroying me. And so I would suppress those, and then I'd do drugs so I wouldn't feel. But when I learned meditation, it teaches you how to like let those thoughts come in, process them, and then push them out. So you start to get a little bit of control. You learn how to deal with things, and
You're not so scared of
you're
them.
not so scared because like, I see it with kids, even my own daughter, anxiety will build up, and she doesn't want to deal with it. I don't want to talk about that. I don't want to talk about it. But I'm like, but from what I've learned, you do have to talk about it.
Yeah.
You do have to let those feelings come in, and you have to learn how to push them, or you direct them. I shouldn't say push them, direct them where they need to go. Um, and that's another good quote I heard was, your best self isn't the one that does everything they want. It's the disciplined version. That's the best version of yourself, is the disciplined version. And that's what basically a recovery is being disciplined, routine, staying busy, healthy things that help get that natural dopamine back. So I'm starting to do those things again so that I don't fall off the path. And that's,
What would you say to the person who is struggling to stay sober or clean? Like, would you have just
it's, I mean, everybody's situation is different, but I think the first thing is just accepting that you're an addict, because I didn't accept it for a long time. And then once you accept a certain fate, then you can start to deal with it. And then obviously goals and dreams are amazing, but you have to have goals. You have to have a purpose. And I didn't have a purpose anymore. I stopped having a purpose because my whole brain was consumed with thoughts. And I stopped trying to live somewhat to the future. I stopped living in the moment. And the moment I stopped, and started living in the moment, you start to enjoy life again. And you start to see the little things. And that's another thing. When I used to give talks, I try to tell this to my kids all the time, and they just.
who'd you do the talks with?
So after my accident, WorkSafe did a YouTube video of my accident and my, getting back to work. And then utilities would call, or companies would call, and I'd go there and give safety talks, tell my story, and then I'd give safety talks. And then they flew me out to Vancouver one time to do this Power of the Mind thing. And it was pretty helpful in the sense it talks about, like, when you wake up in the morning, if you're negative, or if you start thinking about all the shitty things that happen to you. Because I mean, life is 10% is what happens, 90% is how you deal with it,
Yeah,
right? Or how
totally.
you react. So, you start to those. It's all you think about, right? Is
Yeah.
those shitty times or negative times. And if you wake up in the morning and you're negative, then throughout the day you only look for negative things.
Just dwelling and
You're just
sitting
gonna
in
dwell.
it. Yeah.
It's like,
You attract more shit.
yeah.
Yeah.
Or if you wake up positive, it's like you buy a new vehicle, right? You buy this white car, you got it. You start to notice that white vehicle all the time because subconsciously it's in your brain. So you're looking for it. You don't realize it. So if you wake up in the morning and you're positive, throughout that whole day, you're going to see the positive things.
Yeah.
And the negative things you don't see. But if you wake up and the first thing's negative, then you're going to see all the negative things, and you won't even notice the positive things.
Mm-hmm.
You start to retrain your brain. You start to give yourself goals, and you give yourself a purpose, and that natural dopamine comes back, and it starts to regulate, and then you start to be disciplined, routined, and you change.
You just got to stay the course
You got to stay
and
the
have
course.
the purpose, the dreams, the discipline.
And the shitty thing is, whether you like it or not, once you're an addict, you're an addict.
You're
It
not
doesn't. You don't get over it.
once a pickle, never a cucumber,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, right, right. So it's something I have to live with for the rest of my life. And I wish, and that's one of the reasons why I want to talk to people and reach people before they get to that point,
Mm-hmm.
is because there's no turning back. So now it's something we have to deal with for the rest of our lives.
So, getting help for suppressing emotions and actually dealing with traumas, which you've had a handful of them. There is an expression, um, gone into a barrel full of tits and come out sucking your own thumb.
Yeah,
You heard
yeah,
that one?
yes.
Yeah.
That's an old school. That's
Yeah.
an old one.
Someone told me that once, but I'm like, oh, that's like, that is,
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, trauma.
What do you do? Like, where do you go for help? You talk to someone like a counselor or therapist?
Counselor, psychologist,
Yeah.
especially with trauma. Like I recommend a psychologist because it does rewire your brain,
Yeah.
right? And then so when you do a drug, you don't understand why you're feeling the way you do from that drug. Whereas if you understand and you understand to cope and heal properly, because that's one thing I never healed healthy.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's a healthy way to cope and there's a healthy way to heal.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't know that, it's easily.
Or if you're too stuck in the place of shame to talk about it, right?
Yeah.
Which is why I truly think your story is so great, because you've been through a lot and all seemingly hard things to talk about. And, you can shed light on the fact that you can, like, you tried the not talking.
Yeah.
You did that for years and years, and you played the part and you were okay, and it only cost you so much. And like your psychologist had said, right? You could have had this, but you did that, and now you got this,
Now
right?
you got to
And
deal with this.
yeah, it's that short-term pain, long-term gain
Yeah.
side of things.
And like when you're healthy, like your happy times are way happier, and your sad times might be more sad. But you have to feel every emotion.
Be real.
As soon as it's like I said before, balance.
Mm-hmm.
As soon as you cut off one emotion,
You cut them all off.
you cut them all off.
Mm-hmm.
You have to feel everything. And I said this to someone that it was someone passed away that was close to someone, and it was hard. And I said, make sure you feel your sadness, feel your anger. I said, if you're angry, be angry. If you're sad, be sad. If you don't want to tell someone you're doing well, don't tell them. Tell them you're doing shitty. And then eventually you'll heal from that. You'll let your body go through the proper emotions, and then you'll feel happiness again. I mean, losing a child, it's never gonna be healed from it, but I've learned to live with it. And sometimes they're better, sometimes they're worse.
And feel what it feels like to do that, instead of just trying to find a way to do the next thing that is okay, right?
Yeah.
Like really giving yourself that space and time. How did that look? Because you had quite a lot compacted, and then you went to treatment. Did you do a lot of healing through treatment?
I learned how to do it properly.
Yeah.
From treatment.
And like you say, meditations.
Yeah.
And,
The problem was where I screwed up after treatment was I let myself think that I was stronger than I was.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't listen to people that was saying, you can't, I'm telling you right now, you can't be around it because you will fail. And I was stubborn, and I was like, no, I'm good. And I remember saying that to my counselor. I was like, oh no, I'm feeling so good. I'm never going to touch it again, this and that. And she's looking at me like, no, no, you're wrong. And she's like, no, I don't think that's a good idea. And didn't listen. And it's one of those moments where it's like, listen to someone that's been there before. Don't learn the hard way for yourself.
Yeah.
I just find that I'm in a spot where I want to be better. Like like I want to enjoy the moment, and I can't do that if you're screwed up. Like, and I don't mean screwed up mentally. I meant screwed up from drugs. Because it's I don't know. It's amazing when you stop how clear your brain gets and like how you see everything and like everything starts to open up and like everything seems limitless. But when you're using, it just that window just gets smaller and smaller and smaller. And then next thing you know, and I don't know. It's like I said, I want to enjoy these important times in my life. And I got some big goals.
What are they?
I want I want to join a Paralympic golf team. I
Hmm?
want to golf. Um, I want to travel again, start doing talks. You know, and it's and then one of the reasons why I stopped giving talks is because I felt like a hypocrite because I was using at the time near the end, and I'm like, how can I talk to people if I'm this way? So I stopped doing it, and those things brought me
Do you think
happiness.
that you could have talked regardless of that, but you just had like too much shame, or
Yeah, there's a lot
was
of
it a
shame. I felt like a hypocrite. Yeah, I'm like, how can I talk to people about motivation and all this if I'm this person?
mm,
But at the same time, it's like, one thing, like I said about this podcast, is that, some people think that they can't do it because they relapsed. That's not a bad thing. Relapsing is not a bad thing. It's gonna happen. Like the stats of like people that actually don't relapse,
mild?
it's super
I'm
mild.
one of the lucky ones in that regard with alcohol.
Yeah,
I
it's like
never went back, but
it's less than 5%, I think.
yeah.
Right? And most people will relapse, but
Hmm.
it's okay to relapse, and
It's
it's okay to
okay.
talk about it. And that's why like
There's
meetings,
something to be learned in the relapse itself, right? And
yeah, and that's why meetings are important, right? Because you can go there and talk about it, and those people have been there and they understand what you're going through instead of hiding.
yeah, there's definitely support out there for anyone that's struggling
Yeah,
in that regard.
yeah.
So you got big goals. Today you're clean and sober, or is that true?
Yeah, I'm not. So
Sober?
I've had a few
Clean.
drinks. I won't lie about that, but I'm not touching the white stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I don't even care to drink. I don't care to do anything. But um, I don't want to even think about drinking or doing like it to the extent where, I'm getting drunk just because it's like I think my brain still has a lot more healing to do.
Mm-hmm.
I think it needs to get a lot better before I go down a path of being social. And I might not even want to. Like,
Just kind of living in today.
yeah, like if you're
And
feeling really good, there's no point.
as long as you're kind of putting yourself first, like you said, and your kids
Yeah.
and that, then
And the environment I'm in right now, and I'm seeing someone, and she's awesome. She brings the best out of me, and um, she doesn't. She's trained to do a Spartan race, and she doesn't drink right now. So it's such a good environment that I'm just getting better and better every day. So
how are you feeling right now? Would be a good question I would
better than
ask.
when we started.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's the
more
connection
comfortable.
for you, hey?
More comfortable.
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of a lot to come and just film a podcast.
Yeah.
New early days.
Well, and I wing everything too.
Yeah.
I don't prepare
Yeah.
for anything. So.
Um, so I do just have a couple questions that I think
Yeah.
I'll run by you here. So what is the biggest challenge in sharing your own story?
Um, just the fact that I was an addict, the shame part of it, the guilt. Like I said, I was someone that was never into that stuff before, and then you pretend that you're something you're not. I hated that part of it, pretending I was something I wasn't, because drugs. You're not who you are when you're an addict or you're doing drugs, and people kind of will judge you on those moments and those things, and that's not who you are.
So
And
what's the reward of sharing it today
I think just
or previously?
yeah, I think just getting it off your chest, and not suppressing those feelings, and hopefully reaching someone that's in that moment where they think they're scared to share, and they know that if they do open up and talk to someone, that there's other people going through the same thing, and it's easier to go through things with someone else than by yourself. I mean, it's a well-known fact that support, especially with addicts, so you need support. you can't, it's so hard to do on your own. And so if you're willing to share and get it off your chest, you're opening that door for support.
Well, that's what they say too, right? A connection is the opposite of addiction,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
I believe that to be true. Hence why wanting to start this podcast and have a place for people to speak openly, not just about addiction, but anything that is shame producing and that
Yeah.
people live with that they feel like they're alone with, right? So yeah, that's good. When you look back, if it hadn't been for what would maybe have you not gotten here?
Into this moment, you mean?
Yeah, like what would you say the one thing in your life that kind of, if it hadn't been for, you wouldn't be
Oh,
here?
my kids.
Yeah,
Yeah.
kids.
Yeah. 100% my kids. I have a really good bond with all my kids, and on different levels, they're all different. So I didn't want to lose out any more time with them. Yeah, that was definitely the biggest thing.
Being a good dad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, it's not their fault for the things that I've been through in my life. So it's like, and that's the other thing too. Like, another thing that why I want to do this is having people understand addicts. Um, is that people don't understand how important that is, like generational trauma,
Hmm.
right? So like because of what I've been through, life that happened to me, now if I become a certain way and don't deal with those problems properly, I push that anxiety and those problems onto my children, and then they're gonna have to grow up with it, and they don't realize they're having a problem until they're in their 20s, 30s, right? And then then they can pass it down to their children, and then they got to deal with those things, and then they're more addictive to drugs or alcohol. So the first time that they touch something, they're that more susceptible to being an addict.
I definitely can relate to that because I'm yeah, a byproduct of that, right? Of
Yeah,
yeah, not knowing why at 12 years old having that first drink, I feel like I can finally fucking breathe,
yeah,
and
yeah,
you add, additional traumas, and not just the traumas of, you say, your family on
yeah,
that, and it is a perfect storm,
yeah.
isn't it?
Like Gabor Mate, he's got a lot of books, and one of the things when I was in rehab, I read one of his books, and he talks about like generational trauma and what that does, and how that gets passed on and passed on. He talks about how you're not born with anxiety, so most people that suffer from anxiety, it's been pushed on them somehow.
Mm-hmm.
Something's happened to them that they've become anxious and they can't deal with that fear, right? Fear is basically when you look at fear and you get scared to want to deal with it, it makes you anxious. That anxiety of having to deal with that fear. And fear is not a bad thing.
Mm-hmm.
Fear is like a survival thing for us. But we have to learn how to deal with the fear.
We've been kind of, maybe as a culture, society, like, yeah, just conditioned to look externally for these things, right? And not take a lean into ourselves to say, what is happening inside of me that, why am I anxious?
Yeah,
It's just like, how can I fix the anxiousness?
yeah,
And there's always going to be the answer just outside of ourselves, and usually only just our arm's length away. And, until we really want to do that work that you are doing,
yeah,
and, you know, we might not, we'll probably keep hitting the same brick
yeah.
walls,
Yeah,
right?
you have to be willing to put the work in.
Yeah, the willingness to want to do it differently, which you did, and kind of solidifying your why, I think, is a big part of it too. Hey, like,
Yeah,
it's just, you need to know why you're doing it so that when you are crossing paths with things that may be triggering, or you get that flood back of, this is,
yeah,
that pathway seems the easiest to, but to make different decisions because your why is so strong,
yeah.
right? Are there discrepancies today between what you believe and how you live?
Um, I, a part of me, I want to get back to who I was.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I mean, one of the things that with my accident, I'm not that person anymore. Like physically, I'm not that person. So I had to create a new person.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember I met this guy that lost his arm and leg, and he was like, "Oh, you have to let go of the old you, and you have to make a new you." But that for me, that wasn't 100% correct. It's like I wanted a hybrid. I wanted a
Mm-hmm.
combination of the old me and a new me. And I think that's my goal now. Is like I want that. I want the old version of Mike, like my personality, happy, the jokester, making people laugh. But I also want a new version that knows how to take care of myself, you know, and that's very oriented. So I think I want to be a better version.
It's nice. It sounds nice that you have this version of this person that you are, that you know you can be, that you can kind of go back to, right?
Yeah,
That you're not kind of starting from scratch. Like you know your good qualities and you know what you're capable of,
yeah,
and letting that fuel you, I think is like amazing. You know.
yeah. Like I was a really good. I'm not trying to like pat myself in the back, but I felt like I was a really good person before. Like um, I was very kind and giving. I mean, I had a temper, really bad temper, but
None of us are perfect.
yeah, none of us are perfect. But I I want that guy back. You know, so I know that if I'm sober, he's still there
Hmm.
because the piece of shit that I was when I was using, that I need to get rid of that person altogether. I need to go back to that good guy.
How is it being in a new relationship, like with, previously struggling with insecurities and stuff like that?
You know, well, that's the thing. I found when I wasn't with my wife because of all the issues and that was related to those insecurities.
Hmm.
I realized that people actually still like my confidence. Like I'm more confident. You know, and you wear confidence.
Hmm.
Um, you know, and I thought I wasn't attractive anymore, and turns out I might still be a little bit. So,
There you go.
so that works. So,
Good.
and I didn't think I was with
Yeah.
who I was with before in a relationship. So, I think just being with someone new,
Fresh new
um,
take
you know,
on, yeah,
yeah, and that brings those good qualities out.
it's awesome. Yeah, not everything is as glaring or as
Yeah,
isolated. Thank you so much for coming on here and sharing bits of yourself and your story in hopes to help ease someone else's journey and your own. It is like a real pleasure and an honor to talk with you, and I hope that we can do it again and maybe we could dial in on
yeah,
some
for
more
sure.
specific stuff. But I think it's just like super awesome to get a kind of a feel for you and, put it out there that, you know, you've struggled and you maybe still do in ways, and
Yeah,
you've kind of found what's working for you or what is working for you, and that it is possible, and you can kind of go through some of the most uncomprehendable traumas and experiences in life, physical and emotional, and still be here to tell the tale and to be raw and honest with that.
yeah.
I think that's just so much courage, and if anything, you've helped me here today, and yeah, really appreciate you being here.
No, thanks. I appreciate the invite, and I'd gladly do it again for sure.
Awesome. Put it there. Okay, that's a wrap.
Hey, I'm Morgan. I'm the producer of the Hold On to Your Heart Project podcast. Thanks for tuning in to another episode. If you'd like to find out more about what we're all about and check out other episodes, you can find us at holdontoyourheartproject.com or on YouTube and Instagram at Hold On to Your Heart Project. Thanks for stopping by.